This is BIV Today, the daily business video show and podcast from the journalists at Business in Vancouver. I'm Hayley Woodin. This week, we're taking a look at some of the issues that most affect women in business in this province, and this complements a special supplement we have in our newspaper this week focused on women in business. Today, we're talking about childcare. It's perhaps fair to argue that COVID-19 has increased the sense of urgency with which we're having some of these important discussions around childcare. The pandemic has certainly shown us the important link between childcare and affordable childcare and the broader economy. Joining me for this discussion today is Sharon Gregson. She is the provincial spokesperson for the $10 a day childcare plan. She also works with the Coalition of Childcare Advocates of BC. Sharon, great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure, Hayley. Glad to be here today.
To what extent do you think the pandemic has exacerbated some of the issues around childcare in BC?
Well, where to start? Certainly, there is a greater awareness now of the link between access to childcare and the ability of parents to participate in the workforce, and that underpinning for our economy. So we have Dr. Bonnie Henry, the Premier, even the Prime Minister, all now talking about childcare as an essential service, that it really underpins the ability for people to go to work. So that's number one. It's also made clear, though, what a difficult job it is to work in childcare, with now the addition of health protocols on top of the expectation around providing quality and safety for young children. It's a really tough frontline job, and it is terribly underpaid, even with the important $2 an hour wage supplement that the provincial government has been providing for the last couple of years. So as far as the workforce goes, it's a big issue.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned some of the people who have been focusing recently on childcare. The Premier has recommitted to, if reelected, a $10 a day childcare plan sometime within the next decade. The Prime Minister also saying that there's going to be an investment from Ottawa in some kind of a national early learning or childcare system. Do you think that these commitments are enough to get us to where you think we need to be?
Well, I'll start provincially. So John Horgan has recommitted to 10 a day. And I think that's an important distinction in language, because 10 a day has already started. Since April 2018, we've had 10 a day childcare happening in this province. So we've got prototype sites where all families in those sites can access childcare at $10 a day, which is $200 a month. But also across the rest of the province, no matter which childcare program families are using, they still can qualify for $10 a day childcare based on some income testing affordability measures. So right now there are about 32,000 children in our province whose families are paying $10 a day or less. So what we've heard from John Horgan is a recommitment to continue to build that system, which is exactly what we need to have happen. Now, federally, we've got the Prime Minister talking about Canada-wide investment in a system of early care and learning. And the timing is perfect, because in order for whoever is successful in our provincial election to continue implementing the 10 a day plan, we need those federal dollars. And so it's very appropriate that the feds should step up, because of course, when parents work, when mothers work, we pay provincial and federal income tax. So the feds should be at the table.
John Horgan was asked last week about whether that recommitment came with a resetting of the 10-year timeline first associated with his initial commitment to provide $10 a day access to childcare in BC. If it takes another decade to get affordable, universally accessible childcare, what are some of the economic or social costs that might bring on BC families?
Well, we won't let it take another 10 years. We told government at the last election that it was a 10-year plan that we were providing. We're in year 3 of that plan right now, and we need incremental investment with every budget to continue building the system. So overall, it's still a 10-year plan, but we're in year 3. And there are investment costs up front about $200 million a year on top of the original investment. That's true. But we know that when people go to work, they spend money in their local economy, they pay income taxes. And so that's actually creates a payback back to government for that original investment. And that's what we've seen evidenced in other jurisdictions. There's lots of research to prove that it's not just a long-term investment, it's a short and medium return for government. And so it's win-win. Children benefit when they've got access to quality services. Families benefit when they can support their own family, and the economy and community benefit when things keep ticking over and running along. So it's really the way for government to go.
You mentioned some of those prototype programs for $10 a day that are already in place, but outside of those programs, how much does it cost on average to put a child into childcare?
Well, it's shocking for most people who don't have young children to learn that if you're in Vancouver, for example, you can be paying over $2,000 a month for the care of one child. So if you've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, you're easily looking at a few $1,000s in childcare fees on top of what is typically an expensive housing market. So childcare is very difficult for people to afford if they get a space. Government has made some investments over the last couple of years, which have reduced fees up to $350 a month reduction for over 60,000 families in our province. That's great news. But because we don't have caps on fees, as government keeps helping, providers keep putting the fees up. And so we need to make sure that our childcare system runs as smoothly as other systems that have got public investment. And so we need to make sure that the fees are monitored.
In addition to those rising fees, are there any other contributing factors that add to the high cost of childcare?
Well, it's a service that's really dependent on the people providing the service, and the link between parent fees and ECE wages is very clear. And so we need a publicly funded wage grid for early childhood educators to give them a starting wage of about $26 an hour, because recruitment and retention is a major, major problem in the sector.
Will that increased wage solve, do you think, the recruitment challenges if we scale up childcare in BC over the next decade or over the next 6 or so years? Will we have enough people to provide the spaces that are ultimately needed to bring affordable childcare to all British Columbians?
Well, we won't if we don't implement the province-wide wage grid. But if we do, then yes, working with young children is a really fulfilling career choice. And if it were paid appropriately, it would solve our recruitment and retention issue.
Now, I know the BC government has said that reopening schools really wasn't about childcare, although we've been talking a little bit about that link between accessing childcare and what that means for the economy. It allows parents, for example, to go to work, to spend more, if it's affordable childcare, to contribute to the economy in different ways. Do you think going back to school and opening schools is related to that childcare piece?
Well, for us in British Columbia, licensed childcare is around children 0 to 12. And so for children from 0 to 5, it's about full day childcare. And then from 6 to 12, it's around before and after school childcare. It's all part of a licensed system. And there's no question that for parents, what happens before and after school for their elementary aged children is integral to them being able to participate in the workforce. Not many people's jobs are from 9 to 3, the school day. And so it's really linked around parents, particularly women, being able to participate in the labor force is having access to childcare that supports children 0 to 12. And yes, that includes before and after school.
In addition to working toward the slightly longer term plan of $10 a day, we know the province is focusing on childcare in the interim as part of the province's economic recovery. What would you like to see be part of that recovery as it concerns childcare?
So our recommendations are that the 10-a-day prototype site should expand so that more childcare programs in the province are 10 a day. It's a much easier system for parents to navigate if they just know what their fees are without having to be income tested and go through a lot of bureaucracy to figure out their fees. So expand the number of 10-a-day sites, implement the ECE wage grid, the minimum $26 an hour starting wage, and start to create more spaces with public partners like school districts and municipal governments, because it's very appropriate that public dollars for the expansion of childcare be built to build public assets, not create private assets and private wealth. And so making sure that school districts step up, as they have said they want to provide childcare in all 60 school districts around the province, would be very appropriate. So those are the three key things.
Sharon, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show and share your insights on this issue. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Hayley. Great questions.
Sharon Gregson, she is the provincial spokesperson and an advocate for the $10 a day childcare plan. She is also working with the Coalition of Childcare Advocates of British Columbia. Thanks so much for watching. This has been BIB Today. I'm Hayley Woodin, and you can tune into our podcast throughout the week to hear more stories and more coverage of issues that affect women in business in BC. Thanks for watching.